So the funny thing about change is, as humans, we've always worried about change. We've never ever been good at change at all. And this strange contraption that you're looking at right now, this sofa was actually very contentious back. If you went back to newspapers, even in Toronto in the Victorian era in the 1800s, you would see people writing articles about this sofa because it was appearing in households for the first time. And there were a lot of complaints about this terrible contraption. And the terrible thing about this instant change to the family was very strange. It was that children are going to sit on them all day and just stay inside and read. And although that sounds very strange now, that was the worry we had. We had very strange ideas about change a long time ago. Change is also not just something we're not good at or accepting, it's also unlikely. And if we look back, and I know we're very close to a US election coming up in under 30 days, and that's kind of apropos of this slide. If you look at the top left and you look at the one with Reagan and Carter in it, and I dial you back all the way to the late 1970s when Reagan decided to run, it seems obvious to everybody now that Reagan was this president and he was supposed to be president. But the truth is, in the late 70s, this actor who became governor of California was never supposed to be president. He was very unlikely. In fact, the Democrats, headed up by Jimmy Carter at the time, were thrilled to run against Reagan. Who would ever vote for an actor? And if you think about it now, a reality star. If you look at Bill Clinton over here and you think, well, he just made sense. He was a president at the time. It just made a lot of sense, but it didn't make a lot of sense in the Democratic Party. If you actually go back to when Clinton started to run, he was actually number 11 out of 11 of Democratic candidates that was trying to get the Democratic ticket. Bill Clinton, amongst everything else, was extremely unlikely to win the Democratic ticket and ever become president. It was never likely. He was never supposed to be president. You remember Barack Hussein Obama with the wrong name at the wrong time, and he was a junior senator from Illinois, and he had no right to be running for president and winning president. He was a junior senator. How dare a junior senator run? I mean, but now you think about him, you think about, oh, well, for sure, that's someone I would understand as president. But it was very unlikely that Barack Obama would ever become president, in fact, twice. And then this guy behind me. The funny thing about Donald Trump is that none of us thought he would become president. In fact, there's so many times where we keep challenging that idea, and there's a lot of controversy about it. But you know what? He ran and he kept on showing up and he won the presidency. But he was never, and you all know this, never supposed to be president. The thing about change is that it's not just we're not good at it. It's also very unlikely. But when it happens, it seems so likely. Change in business is also very forgotten. If I ask you, what happened to all these ladies here, these elevator operators? Where did they go? Do you remember the riots when we decided to get rid of elevator operators? There's this kind of idea that the change that happens in business in our lives, that is going to destroy business, that when we make these shifts in business and we change, there's mass unemployment and things are all going to go away, that robots here are to take away our existence. But these people that were helping us with elevators moved on to other jobs. Where did the horse and buggy drivers go? When you go back to the early times in any major city, the horse and buggy, it was a great job. And the time when cars started to come in, it was so strange when the first automobiles came in. We used to take a horse head and put it on top of the car to show that there might be a horse inside. It was so strange. And we do weird things now with electric cars. We actually have, engines that sound like gas engines when they're not. You think about, where did all the bank tellers go? Back in the 70s and 80s, when all these, in Canada, the original green machines and all the bank teller machines came in, well, for sure, it was going to be terrible for the banking industry if you were a teller, because we would fire every single teller and none of them would have jobs. The funny thing is, there's more bank tellers now than there were back then, and they just do better jobs. What I'm trying to say is, we forget that we go through evolutions of change in business, and obviously those make actually very positive changes going forward. We're just not good at recognizing it. Change is also something unknowable. And we also think that when we look back that it was so obvious, but it's always almost unknowable. If I get in a time machine and I go backwards to meet this guy who's got his arms crossed in this picture, the year is 1903 and he's on a farm. He needs 200 people to farm 100 acres, when today it's 1 or 0. And I go back and I say to him in my time machine, I said, hi, I'm from the year 2020. And in my era, we We basically have very small percentage of the population, anything to do with farms. Where this man lives, 80% of the planet is indirectly or directly connected to farming. But I tell him, but in my world, it's only 2%. Only 2% in my world. He says, you must live in this terrible time when nobody has a job. And then I tell him, no, we have all these jobs. And he says, well, what kind of jobs do you have? And I said, well, we have a lot of great jobs like CIO. And he says, what's that? I said, it's a chief information officer. And he says, well, what does that person do? And I said, well, that person runs a computer system in a big company. And he says, what's a computer? The idea is very simple. We can't tell you what the jobs of the future are because we don't understand them yet. It's unknowable, and it's always going to be unknowable. If you look at the internet coming into the age of the late 90s, you could never have described to people in the late 90s, which is not very long ago, what all these great new jobs we have now. Look at the new job that just came out very recently, like data scientist. Even 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we really didn't understand that job. What happens with change and change in business is that we come up with new jobs and things we just don't know. The truth is that when things happen in business and big changes come, these unobvious change comes with these massive price drops in the market. So what actually happens and why Amazon and Google and Facebook became so incredibly popular is they come into a market and they change the cost structure exponentially. What the internet did, this general purpose technology, was allow us to find things very, very quickly. And if you look at what Amazon did, they were able to do that with just about everything you ever wanted. And Google did it with search. And actually, Facebook did it in a way of connecting you realistically and then advertising. So the whole thing comes in with these dramatic price drops, because before these companies came in, things like finding certain things and getting to certain things was actually quite expensive. When they came in, it dropped by 10, 100, 1,000 times cheaper. And that's the big drops you see in the change in the market. And as you sit there as benefits consultants and people in your industry, you're going to say to your, I ask this question, but Michael, are robots coming to take our jobs? And this is a great picture for you to look at, because when I say are robots coming to take your job, you think, well, is there this C-3PO type robot that's there and that's going to take your job? Well, no, a C-3PO robot isn't going to take your job. But what is coming to take your job are the robots in general. Just like things have happened in our past, that if you didn't accept in the 80s that Excel spreadsheet had to be used in accounting, you weren't going to make it. There's many times where technology comes into a place and changes. There was a time when the fax machine changed everything, the time when the mobile phone changed everything. You must understand that robots are coming for your job, but you need to accept the robots and work with them. Although they're not going to look like this, they are going to change everything about how you do business.